What up, everybody? This is a dude, Shot Town celebrity, shout out artist Brick Chicago. I'm on here. A couple of my fans was like, "Why don't you talk about photogenic materialism reality and like elaborate on it, the details of it and everything?" So I'm here. I'm here to talk about it. Photogenic materialism reality, it's like, what is that? That's like, photogenic materialism reality is like thought projected reality, the ability to like, it's like thought projected reality, like, say for instance, like a camera takes a photo, say for instance, like a camera takes a photo, and the photo is a product of the camera, like a thought. So, like a thought from a person. So, to say all of that, I'm coming from that because it's like just out of the world of thought. You have starting off from like religious beliefs, right, or quote unquote religious beliefs. And by the time I'm done with this, you'll know why I say quote unquote. So, according to religious beliefs, right, we have like, you got the Bible, Genesis to Revelations, and then you have any other doctrines. You have Orthodox doctrines, and if you have any unorthodox doctrines out there, you have them being derived from Genesis to Revelations, being derived from a beginning time to up until now. Whether it's something that's not written up until now, or something only written to a certain amount of time, or nothing up to date that explains it, and that sort of thing, right? So, simply to like turn down some of the mysteriousness about reality and its creator, just from purely thought. And you have, like I said, you have the Bible that have questions like the Bible that arise questions like. So you have the Bible, you have Genesis to Revelations, right? Photogenic materialism reality is like a magician saying abracadabra and making something to the fictional outlook of a magician's abracadabra, right? So you have like a human, So you have a human. You even have evolution, and you also have like concepts of words. When you deal with, I'm gonna get into that later. Let's just say you have a human. So you have Genesis to Revelations. You had a story of the Bible that explains a beginning time about reality and the creator of a reality, which would be this reality, right? So you have this book, and this book have this reality of stories, or this line of stories, array of stories, God inspired writings. People who are God inspired are called prophets and all of those sort of things. So you have this book of writings of things that was given straight from the Most High, or a higher power, what would be considered as God. God is a word derived from so and so. So God describing a supreme being, right? So you have a supreme being, you have God. So you have this look. Is God a spiritual being, or is God a physical being, even if it was different than a physical man? Because you only have so many beings, right? You have human beings, and then you have spiritual beings. You have like angels. You have like quote unquote, let's just say you have angels, and you have God. You have this specific belief of God, right, being a spiritual being. So that means he's a functional spiritual being, just like we're functional cardinal beings, right? So photogenic materialistic reality with a manual scheme, on a manual scheme. And the reason, and you look at the reason of it being a manual scheme. You look at the reason of it being a manual scheme, you know what I'm saying, based on based on like conception, right? Concepts, right? So, like, why would you make a spoon and you don't have anything to use the spoon for? So concepts, right? So you photogenic materialistic reality to a manual scheme, this concept scheme. So we're gonna go back to a spiritual being. These questions, you know what I'm saying? The Bible speaks about a spiritual being. The Bible speaks about many different things. So we'll look at the Bible. I'll take some fictional looks, and I'll even elaborate on some quote unquote non-fictional looks of the Bible, because it's the Bible. I'll leave it to you. I'm basically trying to present to you this just simple little trail of thought, this little scrutiny of thought called photogenic materialistic reality. I'll leave it to you. You know what I'm saying? If it makes sense to you, that's, I leave it to you to think about and, enjoy the sense that it makes to you and all the things, right? So, going back to the Bible, Genesis, the Revelation, so the creation, so God blew his breath into man, man became a living cardinal being. God is like the spiritual being, right? So God being like this spiritual being, right? So a spiritual being. You know what I'm saying? Basically, to look on into the Bible, the relation between God and man. So we'll go back to just the non-relation between God and man. God blew his breath into man. Man became a cardinal being, and man went through all these things, listening to God. Scrolls, tablets, covenant, the Old Testament or the First Testament, the New Testament. Jesus came. These walks of men, Jesus being begotten. You know what I'm saying? Different than like cardinal birth. To its every component. So Jesus reality of being a begotten, person, right? A quote unquote prophet, right? And you have Jesus and what he went through for quote unquote everybody's sins, and you have the whole covenant of the Bible. So and this is just a little neat story, and we're waiting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not being blasphemous. I'm just looking at the story how it was written from an ancient point of view, right? So in this story, the story speaks about the spiritual being God. He is, was, and always will be. So, but it doesn't really speak elaborately on how, where did God come from? Did God create himself? Was God created by another God? So it just sort of starts off with he was. So going on, so we go all the way from he was, and you have all the things that went on through the Bible. And the most the Bible tells us about God is that he is, was, and always will be, right? Being like, from that standpoint of the whole story and the whole concept of the creation of man from God, you unassociate us with God, you know what I'm saying, until you go on farther in understandings of thought. Well, if he blew his breath into man, and man's spirit is the breath of God, was that very breath God? Was he at one with his, is he and his breath the same? So you have a little question like that. You have the little question of who created God? Did God create himself? And or did another God create God, right? So you have humans, these cardinal beings, and you have quote unquote animals, these unhuman cardinal beings, right? These different animals and their different species, amoebas and insects and mammals is just different, right? And then you have humans, the human beings, supreme created being. A human being, we're like pretty complete, right? We're like the most complete being, right? Under God, right? Under God, if you look at God as a spiritual being, manual spiritual being, I mean, as a spiritual being, and you even have that outlook. As a spiritual being, as a spiritual being, I mean, you have to look at how a human is. A human does everything. He eats. A human, he eats, talks. So as a spiritual being, so you wonder, is his spiritualness, is his manual reality to it as a spiritual being, is it that similar to a human? Is it that similar to a human's cardinal manual reality? You know, eating is like tangible things, right? Is it a spiritual reality the same for a spiritual being? Like more phenomenal. Is it more phenomenal? Like how we have the reality of eating, the whole reality of an appetite. So like how we have the reality of eating, the whole reality of an appetite. The spiritual being is, does he even have an appetite, or is it more phenomenal? He could sit there all day and he don't get a cardinal appetite, and he don't need to use the bathroom and wash his skin. It's just a whole uncardinal agenda, right? Or is it cardinal? Is it the very same? So moving right along, a little question like that, right? So you got little questions like that, you know what I'm saying? Going on down to like the return of a last prophet, right? So, okay, that's pretty much the Bible. I mean, I didn't like elaborate on all the books of the Bible and parables and decipher, decode, parables or parables of the Bible, or decode any writings or metaphors or analogies or anything like that. No, I didn't decode every little bit of it. I'm just looking at it like this. I'm just looking at it in a neat objective way, right? So now I'm going to go back to photogenic materialistic reality, right? Answering questions like, okay, so we're gonna look at like God creating himself. So if God created himself, how did he create himself before he even existed? I mean, if he created himself, it was a time that nothing existed, including God. You'd say including the person who created everything, right? This has to be the truth, right? If everything is to come from nothing, including God himself, or unless you'd say it was no such thing as nothing ever, and reality is just a beauty of something that magically or unexplainably existed, and it just is to this day, and it'll forever be a mystery. We'll never be able to explain how it became, or how it just always was, right? Which is like unmathematical, right? It's unlogical to simple manual concepts like before and after, you know what I'm saying? Like a cup, cause and effect. Science, the simple science, it has to have a chronological cause and effect, or, mathematical scheme. It has to have a logical scheme, a before and after kind of thing. So just looking at like, you know what I'm saying? Before there was anything, it was nothing, right? I'm even apologizing, even if I'm like failing to say some things about how the Bible starts and speaks on Genesis, right? I completely apologize, but it still supports photogenic materialistic reality, which could be a foundating concept, because before, if nothing existed, if it was a time where nothing existed, before, until the person who created everything, including himself, done that, okay, right? And so I'm gonna go on from, it's rather impossible not to have been like that. So I'm going on. So the person that created everything and himself, how did he do that? This very same concept that I'm talking to you about, it had to be photogenic materialistic reality. And that is, the thought, you know what I'm saying? The thought of itself materializing photogenically, but to a manual scheme. You say, but to a manual scheme. Yeah, to a manual scheme, when you talk about a man, which is a concept, because you'd have a spirit and you'd have a man, just like a man, a cardinal being, right? A cardinal being with manual schemes, eating, soap to wash his skin. He has skin, but he'll never conceive or achieve the concept of soap, just to simply keep his skin clean, which is another concept. So concept to concept, concept to concept, and it'll be a fact that the person who created himself and everything is just simple thought. It's just simple thought, scale reality, simple thought, mathematics, cause and effect, logic, before and after kind of thing. So, a plate, a spoon, etc. A reality, a person. Why would it be a reality? You know what I'm saying? Without a person to do anything in it. Just imagine a reality. Let's make believe and look at a reality without a person. I mean, it's just sitting here. It's more the thing, right? So, somebody, which would be this manual scheme. Yeah, just like you can think about a more phenomenal expression of reality, quote unquote phenomenal. Less manual, cardinal kind of reality. I mean, imagine just a spiritual being that doesn't eat or do cardinal, manual things being, in the world that was for that spiritual being, even if you feel like it's less dominant or it's less intelligent to a cardinal being in a manual scheme for reality reasons or for reasons of reality being, tangibly, you know what I'm saying, being tangibly sensational, being a sensation of tangible, satisfaction. And I wouldn't say superficial gratification, but tangible satisfaction, like the joy, like the reality of a complete thought. 1, 2, 3 is not 1 to 10. When you say 10, what's so special about 10 other than, 1 and 2? Why wasn't it 2? Why isn't it 2? What's so special about 10? What makes 10 the beginning table or the table to a mathematic, chart that it is, or the table to a mathematic chart, the mathematic chart that it is. You know what I'm saying? What makes it, what makes it so complete? 10 instead of, 10 instead of 2, And you look at it being complete. You look at it being complete more so of, just in the level of counting. In the level of counting, right? Like even if it was 1, 2, and then you start 1, 2, 3, you know what I'm saying? Or 1, 2, right, 1, 2, all right, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3. You know what I'm saying? It's that concept right there, because it's not just like 1, 2, and that's it. Life was, and then it's gone just that quick because that's it. The time's up, right? No, you have to have something that expresses foreverness or expresses a continuing reality, a continuum, right? Just like the concept of a man, right? Before we get into like myths, man. Just think about it. Okay, and I'll go back to that. So photogenic materialism reality. Okay, make a highlight of the numbers. Make a highlight of the numbers, and continue the concept of continuum, right? So we'll go back to photogenic materialism reality and a cardinal being, right? So a cardinal being. So this cardinal being in the manual scheme, so that'll think and create everything, this pattern of thought. So you have concepts, you have like a spoon and a bowl because of a spoon, or a spoon because of a bowl, right? And a man because of reality, and a thought because of another thought. It's thought and it's why, it's photogenic materialistic reality. This whole reality of thinking as opposed to nothing, bringing us back to everything, you know what I'm saying? And these conceptual scales, these intellectual things, it's like, I wouldn't have, a cup, I wouldn't have a cup. I wouldn't use a spoon to eat out of a cup. and that correct concept, right? It's not the correct concept for a cup. Although, yeah, you can eat out of a cup with a spoon because it's a lot like a bowl, but it's not a bowl. It's where you say it's not a bowl in the concept that it's not a bowl. A bowl. So I mean, it's like imagining everything without a bowl. You have a cup, you have a plate, you got a butter knife, you have a spoon, you even have a spoon, but you don't have a bowl. Simple little thought, right? Same thing is like absolutely nothing, 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 no planets, and just look at what is it? What all is it? You have a human, a cardinal being. So far, you have a cardinal being, right? And his reality of being created. I'll leave that open. So a cardinal being, a planet, a solar system, a cardinal being, so a reality. So a solar system, a cardinal being, a place for that cardinal being, which is reality. So and a reality, right? So and the person who created this cardinal being, right? Which had to create itself. I mean, it has to be a beginning like that, right? So we're gonna go in like, what's the relationship between the person who created the cardinal being and the cardinal being, right? So okay, so you can even go to the New Testament, and how Jesus was saying like, yeah, God and man is one, and this and that and the other, right? And that's huge respect. But you're looking at the Bible and you're looking at the Bible being written. So I'm gonna leave you at the New Testament, right? So just going back the relationship between God and man, or the creation and the creator and the beings he created. Because if you say that, then you're going to look at the animals and you have to explain the animals. So what is it like? This wheel of life, like Dante Pete. And please listen to everything before you just go off and like, oh, I heard enough, right? Because it's gonna make a complete thought. So, and I'm also trying to speak. I don't want my time to run out. I want to try to do this in one video. So going back to like I so photogenic materialistic reality, right? You have these thoughts that man. So let's just say, okay, just imagine this with me, and we'll go back to the Bible look. So just imagine, all right, photogenic materialistic reality and its reality. So just imagine, this man creating a reality and everything, you know what I'm saying, and everything, concepts, food. So you're getting down to little highlights like different people, more than one person, you know what I'm saying? What it takes to have more than one person here. You know what I'm saying? So you have one person, the person that created himself through photogenic materialistic reality. It was a thought, all being a thought in time. And that describes the complexity of a thought. And a thought such as this, just to like materialize, and not only materialize, know why, right? So as opposed to, so would you say you'd materialize complete, or you'd materialize just you first, and you're in space and you're in this darkness and you don't understand why? You just have to take years and years and years to think about everything for it to be this complete. You know what I'm saying? Which could also represent a time to a margin, right? You know what I'm saying? So complete thoughts. So say you'd materialize, you'd spawn, right? So there's a reality of how you thought, right? Based on, let's get all these things, right? So let's look at thinking. Let's look at what you thought and how you spawned. You have something called magnetic energy, Celsius magnetic energy, right? So you have like humans in their reality to use and create electromagnetic energy, or magnetic energy, Celsius magnetic energy. If you're going to say we're Celsius Fahrenheit beings when it comes to the temperature, our body temperatures, we're Celsius Fahrenheit beings. So that means one day we're going to achieve Celsius state, because it's a reality characteristic of of electromagnetic energy, right? if you escape all of the things that does not fall under the category of photogenic materialistic reality. So let's look at all those things more captivated, more complete in thought. So let's just say things like human health science. Let's look at how a human has the ability to be healthy, like a plant transitioning from autumn to winter, and if you don't keep the autumn temperatures or summer temperatures on the planet, it's going to wither away in winter, right? It's like a human in their health. Oh, I was fine. I ate vegetables, and when I started eating donuts every day, I began to get sick because I was giving my body nucleus. I was giving my body Celsius nucleus energy, and it's like being in the winter. That's like not eating healthy is like a plant going from autumn to winter. You'd begin to take yourself through a negative process. Not that you can extinguish magnetic energy, because you can't. And magnetic energy is the huge component of a human and his thought concept and his conceptual thought to exist. You exist off electromagnetic energy. So energy speeds of energy that makes sounds, right? Like A, B, speeds A, you know what I'm saying? So these speeds, right, right, it's beyond just surface talking, or it's A because I can say A, right? No, it's concept after concept, believe that. Or, you know what I'm saying? It wouldn't even be a complete thought. It couldn't even exist photogenically, materialistically, photogenic wise. It couldn't even exist, because if there was nothing ever a point of time, then it had to be someone that created everything. And the only way he done that was through photogenic materialistic reality. This has to be a fact. You can take that, and I will leave it to you to scrutinize and debate on. Is that right? Are we sure that's right? And if it wasn't that, how could it be? It's no. If it wasn't that, it's no. So you're just trying to tell me someone who existed beyond cause and effect, beyond never being and then actually existing, created everything. And plus, you saying he must created it by hand? So he must have some workshop, and he created the planets. He had a workshop, he created himself. He had to have a workshop and create himself before he even created himself. So how did he exist, to create himself before he was? Any person or any spirit that created everything, right? It had to create itself and everything. So that brings us to what I'm talking about to you, which is photogenic materialistic reality. And when you say photogenic materialistic reality, you're talking about a certain chronological reality of conceptual things: a spoon, a bowl, a plate, a fork, a butter knife, a cup, a man, a reality, right? So inside of that chronological order of every conceptual thing, or everything which has a concept, a broom, its concept is to do something, right? So you are human. So could it be more than one human? You won't flunk, anything, right? Natural conceptual reality, right? To be a reality in its mosaic, symphonic oneness, its grace of, all right, I'm going down here, because down here is even down there, right? So excuse me. So, this whole symphony, right, of conceptual order, right? So, could it be more than one human? Why couldn't it be? You know what I'm saying? You're dealing with a human in this photogenic reality, so a human who created himself photogenically materialistic, right? Materialistic wise, right? So you have to have this ability about reality in more than one person. How could it ever be, how could it be more than one person with that sort of ability? Just what if it was, or if it wasn't? I mean, it's all about the reality, the truth, right? If it was, who can complain? As long as it wasn't unperfect, you know what I'm saying? Or as long as it wasn't unperfect, you might as well come on out with it. Why couldn't it be perfect? You know what I'm saying? A circle is 360 degrees round, perfect. It's perfect. That's why it's a circle. So it isn't impossible to achieve a perfect thought. It's perfect. Being good is perfect. It's a thought, right? To be good, because there's nothing wrong. It's perfect, right? So, you know what I'm saying? So how could it be more than one human in this reality? How could it be more than one human, with this ability to create himself and everything, all in one wop? You know what I'm saying? It's one human. So you're thinking, all right, this is another human with the same ability. How could they share this same reality? I'm looking at maybe. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm going at a tempo. You might want to take more time. You could, but I'm utilizing this video's time. Besides, I just be on here like saying the same thing. I'm not about to do that. So you might want to look at the question, and this is another reason why I'm elaborating on everything for my fans, for sociological reasons of scrutiny and when you're dealing. But I'm getting to that. So let's just say I'm gonna go with say it was a deityism in one person. But wait a minute, what about girls and animals when you talk about a man? Right, what are you talking, you got it a man, you got food for the man. You know what I'm saying? So you got this man, so if it was a deityism in one reality, so you got animals. What the man is a complete thought himself from, sperm inside of the woman. Oh yeah, that girl, so the concept, so sex, so food, so eating, so soap, so clean. Right? So, you know what I'm saying? So, this man, you got the animals, this man is a man from the reproduction, so an animal, he's not going through animal phases. An animal, it have to be a whole nother creation of a whole nother little being. What do you want this little being for? So I'm looking at materialistic reality as well as photogenic materialistic reality. I'm looking at materialistic reality inside of photogenic materialistic reality as it exists. That means you can have a refinery and create things materialistically. You know what I'm saying? Using Celsius energy, right? So I can make chicken. You know what I'm saying? I can use energy to make raw chicken. What's with this animal? I'm making the same chicken. You know what I'm saying? I'm making the same chicken. Besides, one thing a human is never going to be is an animal and a human at the same time. So this person who creates everything and himself has to decide, well, what part will an animal play? Yeah, he could conceive another little sub-being like an animal, but it wouldn't be complete as himself. But why? For what? For what? He want a pet? He wants some kind of pet? No, they're a little too maintenance for a pet. I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to have to clean out this something and watch something like that. I mean, he's mature and all powerful, the being that created himself and everything, right? It isn't like challenging. It isn't going to scare him, and it isn't a challenge for him or anything. So a little pet, nah, he don't want a little pet. It's cool. So you're gonna get. So I'm saying that to get to something called electronic temperament, right? So I'm going back to this photogenic materialistic reality, and I'm going back to if there could only be one being, and it was a deityism like this, and no animals, because a man could never evolve from an animal. So it wasn't like some evolutionary expression of a man or a metaphysical expression of a